Welcome to the Beyond the Lines podcast. In a world filled with so much hate and division, we just want to do something about that. We have these lines that we draw in our lives where we feel like that is our limit. We can't listen past this line. We can't love past this line. We can't understand someone who is on the other side of the line. But our goal with this podcast, it's to treat all people with the dignity that they deserve, even if we disagree with them. My name is Jonathan Miller. I'm one of our hosts today, and I'm joined by my co-host, Clayton Eddleman. Welcome. I'm so happy to be here with you. It's going to be a good day.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm excited for this episode.
And today is going to be a little bit different. We're going to have occasionally, there's going to be the podcast where it's just me and Clayton, and we're going to be talking today a little bit about ourselves so you know who we are.
That's right.
And we're also going to be just reflecting on what we've learned so far from Cal Jernigan, who has been on our podcast for the last 4 episodes, including episode 0, if you count that. And yeah, we've just learned so much, but I also want to learn about Clayton. I want you guys to know who we are.
Yeah, well, and I think it's important too, because if you're associated with Central and you come to one of our campuses, or maybe even you're a part of the online campus, you might see us in these scenarios, but you could be finding this podcast on YouTube or Spotify or anywhere, and maybe you're like, hey, who are these guys? What are they about? And so it's just a fun episode where we kind of just get to say, hey, this is who we are. You get to learn some stuff about us, and then we're just going to reflect, like you said, on some stuff that Cal has taught us. Well, let's just start off with this. Like, Jonathan, I don't even know this, but where did you grow up, and like kind of what's your upbringing and family or whatnot?
Yeah, that's a good question. I grew up, I was a homeschooler from Iowa. I lived in the forest, away from all people and civilization. And, I was raised to be a Christian and all that good stuff. I think if you think of every negative stereotype, almost every negative stereotype of a homeschool family, that's kind of what I grew up in, is just that we were secluded away from society in our house, and I had loving parents. They were great, but they kind of just chose, like, this is how we're going to raise our kids. We're going to be over here, and, the rest of the world is going to be out there, and we're going to, visit the world to get groceries kind of thing. And the only friends I really kind of grew up with were those at church. We would visit church. We do the Sunday and the Wednesday thing. And that's kind of the only people I knew for a long, long time. And so I remember, the first time I think I ever spent outside the house for a long, significant period of time was going to summer camp. And then that was life-changing. So I wanted to be a counselor, and I became a counselor. And it was a painful experience. I didn't have any social skills. I didn't know how to talk to people. I didn't, especially not girls. It was not good. And I also had this weird, I won't go into the super detail. I had this weird thing where I always wanted to be married. But when I was 10, I was like, I want to be a married man, and I want to be, for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Yep. Mission accomplished, right?
Yeah. I got married really early, but I didn't look like that was ever going to happen because I kind of made an idol, if I was going to use a church word, an idol out of which I started worshiping this idea of being married. And so that really hurt my chances with ladies because nobody wants to be, this guy's weird and he obviously is way too fascinated with the idea of marriage. So I'm going to stay away from this guy. Yep. And so I just didn't, and it also made me really nervous around girls. For some reason, I thought every girl I had to meet, I had to consider if she was a good candidate, which is just dumb for anybody out there who is acting like that. That's just not a good way to live or treat women. They're human beings. They're totally, but I feel like I wasn't doing that because I was so fascinated and infatuated with this idea of being married. I wanted to be a parent. I wanted, do all these things. And it wasn't really till I got rid of that notion and kind of gave that up to God that I actually met, the best person ever who turned out to be my wife later.
That's awesome.
That was really cool. And that, I digress. That's not the question you asked, but, I started gaining social skills. It was painful. I went to a small Christian college, which was perfect for me because it still felt like I was being thrown into the deep water because I just not used to people.
Yeah.
And I slowly gained social skills as I grew up. So I have a lot of stories of being that outcast kid and the annoying kid and the kid who's just obnoxious and probably way too judgmental. I was awful. I was very hypocritical and judgmental of other people and their life decisions. And that's just not, I've learned a lot on how to love beyond in my day, my short days. Very short. I'm not that old.
Yeah.
I'm only 27. So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of a convoluted story of me. What about you? How did you get here? Was your upbringing? Where are you from?
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking back even to what you were telling me, like Iowa. That's a place I've never been, and a place I don't know a whole lot about. I know it's like always first in primaries, and I believe the Blackhawks is at Iowa University.
I'm not a big sports person. 1 second. All the Iowa people are mad at me. There's Iowa State.
Maybe it's Iowa State.
And then they also have the Hawkeyes.
The Hawkeyes, that's what I'm thinking of.
Only college football for Nebraska and Iowa. It's a very big deal. They don't have national teams.
Yeah, so that's all I know about Iowa. But where I grew up is nowhere near Iowa. So I was actually born in Germany. My parents got married. They graduated from Grand Canyon University, and I guess we should say not sponsored. So, but yeah, they graduated from there. They got married while they were there, and then they found out that they were pregnant with me a few months before they were going to Germany for a 2-year mission stint, being missionaries. And so I was born over there, moved back to the States at a very young age, like 1.5 or something.
So you can't speak German.
9. And so moved back. I've been grown up in Arizona pretty much my entire life. And so I'm kind of from North Phoenix area. And that's my neck of the woods. And yeah, I've got, all sisters. That's what I grew up with, and I love them to death. But so I grew up in North Phoenix, and man, how did I wind up at Central? I'm just trying to think. So I went to the University of Arizona, which for some of our people who attend Central, especially our Tempe campus or our Mesa campus, that's a bad word, is saying, hey, I'm a U of A grad and go Wildcats, bear down. Because everyone's an ASU fan at this point, with it being so close. So that's where I went, and I went to school down there and was at the time actually wanting to pursue a career in the medical field, and had this kind of crazy turn of events, a lot of conversations with God, which we don't have to go into detail because that's a long story, but eventually changed my career path completely and said, hey, I'm going to go into full-time ministry. Wow. And so after that, I started pursuing opportunities, started working at a church camp in Northern California in Santa Cruz. It's actually how I met my wife. We met back in 2014. And so just was constantly pursuing ministry stuff. And I went to an internship. Well, actually, after I graduated, I went served as a short-term missionary with an organization overseas. Worked in the country of Slovenia, which is a part of old Yugoslavia.
Wow.
And so it's like the northeast. It's next to the northeastern part of Italy, south of Austria, and like just northwest of Croatia. So they've got a little slice of like the Adriatic Sea, beautiful country, and made a lot of good friends there, and just had an awesome time. But then after that, I went and served at an internship program at a church in Sacramento. And after that was serving as a middle school pastor at a church in Cupertino in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. So you think of like Apple's headquarters, Google's headquarters, that's where I was at, which for me was awesome because I've grown up, being somebody who's kind of an Apple enthusiast. I love tech. I love just kind of learning about everything that's going on in that realm. So it was really cool to be there. But and so I've been in ministry for, counting those years in college where I was serving, close to 7 years now. And so it's been a joy. It's been a fun ride. And wound up at Central. Actually have a friend that I grew up going to church with at a church in Peoria, CCV, and Dakota McGrath. He is our student worship pastor for CSM at Central. And we were just talking one day about ministry, and he was like, hey, Central is looking to fill some positions. And so I took a look at them, and that's short story how I wound up here. But yeah, that's kind of that's a snapshot of how I got to Central, where I kind of grew up, and recently married. I mentioned I met my wife, and
congratulations
in Mount Hermon. Yeah, thank you. And so we got married back in October of 2020, and it's been a lot of fun so far.
Wow. That's great. Yeah. I don't think I said I don't think I said anything about how I got to Central.
Yeah, how did you get here?
Yeah,
because a boy from Iowa winds up at a church in Phoenix, Arizona. How's that work out?
Yeah, I love writing. So originally I thought, which by the way, you said you wanted to be a doctor. I could definitely see you like in sporting like the doctor coat and like the white I don't know, those lab coats. What are they called?
I think that'll be my Halloween costume from here on out.
I feel like you'd look good in that. Like it would fit. It fit. So I see where you're going, just from an aesthetic point of view.
Yeah. Well, my handwriting surely fits the bill of a doctor's handwriting. It's not good, so I've had to adopt like the all capitals because then it's a little bit more legible at that point.
Okay. Yeah. That's how I do my emails.
Just all caps.
No, I don't.
John is really passionate about this email.
Yeah, that's what people think when I do. Yeah, me, Central. So I went to a small college because I felt like, going to camp, God said, I want you in ministry for the rest of your life. And I originally wanted to be a writer. I wanted to do journalism and write. And I got published when I was like 16 or something like that.
Did you really?
Yeah, just in a small magazine. And I got in a book by Gary Chapman. I mean, he didn't write any of it, but a bunch of people contributed it. And I was one of them. It was a devotional book.
That's really cool.
As a kid, yeah. And so I wanted to write. I thought that was where I was going. I love it. I love creating things. That's why we're here today, is I like creating things and making content. So, and this is one of the things I love to do as well. But God said, I want you in ministry. And so I thought, okay, I went to camp, there must be student ministry. And so I went and started getting a degree in student ministry, and I started working at a church, interning, and basically working for free for a long time, for years. And so I got married, and we were going to have a kid, and my wife was in full-time ministry too. She was doing children's ministry, but we realized after having Ezra, our son, we need to flip-flop this, because you can't be full-time in ministry and take care of a kid. She did have like Ezra in her office. It was not working well.
Wow.
And at the church we were at, it didn't look like there was any chance of me ever getting a full-time job. So I was like, I need to find a different place. And so I just, I was like, I started this video ministry at that church. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not sure about student ministry right now. I need to take a step back for various reasons. And so I started looking for churches that needed a video person. And, you have to be a pretty big church to need like a full-time video person. And the first place I applied to was Central Christian Church in Arizona. I was in Nebraska at the time at a church, and they the ones that hired me. It was amazing. I was not good. I don't know how I got hired. But
you've only gotten better. I'm hoping.
Oh yeah, I'm much better now. I'm pretty good. But if I do say so myself. But but they hired me then when I wasn't good, and somehow they developed me, and then I finished my master's in divinity, the most pretentious church degree I've ever heard of. At least the name of it, anyways. I don't know who named that degree. Masters of Divinity. I'm not like, am I a master of the divine now? Like, no.
Essentially,
but it's a really big degree that a lot of like people in ministry get, like and pastors. And so I got it because I thought me and my wife would be called into missions. So I didn't want to be a pastor with that degree, even though a lot of pastors get that degree. I just wanted to be in missions and reach people for Jesus. That's what I wanted to do. But then I got it, and this opportunity for online campus pastor opened up, and I was like, man, this makes sense. Like, I have all these video and design abilities, and I have this pastor degree. I've been trained. I've worked in youth ministry. This seems to fit me. And so I got hired on in July or June of 2020, and we've kind of been riding this roller coaster of figuring out what it means to be an online campus at Central. But man, so many people all over the country, all over the world are being reached with the message of Jesus from Central, and I'm getting to meet them, and that's been a really cool experience for sure. So that's kind of my story, I think, of how I got to Central. But let's talk about like Love Beyond as a church and this podcast. And I think it's time to transition from ourselves. Like, this podcast is definitely more than just you and me. It's not like a personality podcast, although we want you to know who we are, because, our role in this podcast is to make sure we're listening well and we're asking good questions. So you might not get hear a lot from us, because if we're doing our job well and we're not doing a disservice to you and the people we invite onto this podcast, then we don't talk much. I think that's a good role for us to have. So we thought it'd be good for you to get to know us a little bit and know who we are, and we can have a little bit of fun in the process.
Right.
Let's move into Beyond the Lines. Let's hear it. Like, what is Beyond the Lines to you, Clayton?
Yeah. So when I think of Beyond the Lines, we had this whole series at Central this summer talking about love beyond fill in the blank. And one of the the weeks that I think stood out the most is loving beyond your story. And I kind of think that's what it means for me is, as a follower of Christ, as someone who has said, hey, I love Jesus. Jesus is my Lord, my Savior. I just want to replicate what he did, what he said, and make that known to everyone. And so kind of my personal mission statement, which I think ties into Beyond the Lines, is to make the invisible Christ visible. So you and I and everyone else that lives right now and that has lived since Jesus' death and resurrection, we haven't had the opportunity to sit down and be like the disciples and physically see Jesus. For me, I think if I were a disciple or somebody who was living back in the days of Jesus, it'd be so much easier to believe because he's right there in front of me. Mm-hmm. But you and I, we've got our Bible, and that's about it, right? And the history of the church since then. And so for me, loving beyond is saying, hey, here's Jesus to me, and he's done something in me, and I believe he's given me hope and purpose, and has called me to a life that is so much greater. And because of that, I want to love you and go beyond what society's telling me to do or what the world's telling me to do on how I should love you, and really just treat you with value and respect and empathy, and listen to you. So that's kind of what love beyond for me means. And how do I love beyond the lines? You know, you see Jesus hung out with people who were not like him at all. He was with the sinners, and he gets criticized for that, and they're saying, hey, why are you hanging out with all these people while you're having a meal with them? And Jesus is saying, like, those are like the hospitals for the sick people, right? And those are the people who need me. Those are the people who need to hear about my message and what I'm about. And I think about that as well. Like, yeah, it's good. You know, I've got Christian friends and family, but I would say I love my friends who aren't believers and people who I don't even know as friends necessarily, just as much as I love those who are believers, because I want them to experience what Christ has done for me and what he can do for them too. So that's a long-winded answer to that question, but that's just kind of what it means for me. So.
I like what you pointed out about how we don't get to see Jesus as much today. I think there's a verse in the Bible somewhere where it says Jesus was the image of the invisible God. And sometimes that verse makes me a little bit angry because I'm like, I didn't get to see him. Yeah, I want to see the image of the invisible God. But people did see him. And somewhere else in the Bible, I'm really bad at verse numbers and stuff. I'm a pastor. I'm somewhere else in the Bible. It says, even though you haven't seen him, you still believe. Even though you haven't touched him, you trust in him, you follow him, and you trust in the hope that he brings. And so that gives me a little bit of comfort because, that I think Paul wrote that. He's talking to these people where, yeah, you didn't get to see him. And that's such a good point where I think Jesus, what he was trying to show people while he was here is that you get to be me to everyone, as I'm living here, as the Holy Spirit is with you, to everyone that you love. And when you love beyond those lines. And I love one of my favorite passages of Jesus. One of the things that I just love about him so much is when he talks to the Samaritan woman, I think it's John 4, a Samaritan woman at a well. And he blows, sometimes we don't realize how revolutionary that is. Just the fact that he was talking to a woman. Men did not talk to women. And respectfully at all. It's just not something that happened, especially a woman they didn't know. I mean, maybe they talked to their wives, but they did not treat women on the same level in any way, and that's wrong. And that was just the culture of the day, right? But Jesus went up to her and just talked to her, a woman. Next, she was a Samaritan, and Jesus, a Jew, hated Samaritans, and Samaritans hated Jews. Absolutely deplored them. It was awful. But Jesus didn't say anything about her being a Samaritan at all. Right. He didn't say anything about her being a woman either. He just talked to her. And when the disciples showed up, they're like, what are you doing? And next, she was a sinner. Yeah. She made mistakes in her life. Jesus said you had 5 wives, or husband, 5 wives. You have 5 husbands. She was a woman, a Samaritan, and a sinner, and Jesus was talking to her. those are all people you would avoid. Just with one of those categories, a Jewish man would avoid at all costs. Like, they would not talk to them. They just would treat them as nothing. And Jesus completely blew those lines out of the water altogether. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And I love that Jesus is willing to do that, like go way beyond what the culture expects him to, what his friends, what his own disciples would expect him to do. And he's like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to talk to this person.
Yeah.
This person, my Father made her. Like, she's in the image of God. Of course I'm going to talk to her and love her. And you know what amazing thing happened is God used her to reach that entire village.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't a male pastor that went and reached that it was a woman who was in a people group that all Jews hated, and she was a sinner that reached that entire village to know Jesus.
Right. Yeah, and she shared her story and her experience of what Jesus made her felt. If I recall correctly, she goes back into the town and says, like, here's the man that told me everything about me. And I just think about that, and in a sense, she feels known. She feels valued. And we talked about it in one of our episodes. Cal mentioned the adage of, it's not about what someone says to you necessarily in a conversation, but sometimes it's about how they make you feel. And that just makes you feel loved and listened to and cared for.
Yeah.
And I think about that with Jesus and the Samaritan woman. Like, that guy just made her feel something to where she was able to go back to her village and say, hey, let me tell you about this man I just met, which is such a cool story.
Man, I love that story. And I think it illustrates what we're trying to do with this podcast is we're trying to subvert these expectations that our culture put on us. I am a white male, and I'm 27 years old. So therefore, there's a lot of people groups I think my culture say, don't talk to them. They're not as valuable. They, our culture maybe wouldn't blatantly say that to me.
Yeah.
But there are expectations that, I wouldn't talk to these people, or I wouldn't talk to these people. I might even talk to another white guy who's in his 60s and treat him with respect, because some of our culture is like so against these age gaps because we communicate differently.
Yeah, boomers and millennials, and then millennials and Gen Z. Yeah, definitely.
It's like that term, okay boomer. It's a negative, it's derogatory, and it's meant to be like, oh, you're old and you don't understand us.
Yeah.
And I don't care about you. I don't care about your opinion, your wisdom, or anything. Okay, boomer. And it's like, my culture says to do that, and I don't want to do that. Just where are we going to get? What was it Cal said? Like, when we shrink our circles, we're shrinking our souls. Like, these circles of people that we're willing to listen to and talk to, we're shrinking our very own souls. That kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, no, definitely. And he mentioned something about like echo chambers. And when we only love people who are like us and similar to us, we're just creating a smaller circle, like you mentioned. And so I don't know about you, but is there a time where you've experienced somebody maybe reaching out of their circle and loving you kind of beyond or going beyond the lines for you?
One that sticks out really clearly in my mind is this one time when I was working at camp. It was my first year as a counselor. I was actually what they call a junior counselor, which just means we were younger and we got paid a lot less, which counselors don't get paid much at all.
No, we don't get paid a whole lot at all.
I think I got $50 a week or something like that, but it was room and board too. So if you count that in, it's something. But and then like counselors got like $300 a week, which again is not a lot for a summer job if you think about it.
No.
But so when I was a junior counselor, I was coming from that kind of seclusion, not a lot of social skills, like nil social skills, and a lot of judgmentalness, a lot of hypocrisy, and it showed in how I treated people, and none of the other counselors I think wanted to be a part of me. They didn't like that. Understandably, like nobody wants to be judged every moment, like, and see it in the eyes of that person. And that's what I was doing, as I was judging people, and I felt like I was better. The weird twisted part of that is that there was no person I judged more than myself. And so what a big problem with that was my own insecurities, what Cal was talking about, in that I didn't feel like I was good enough. And so I had to pick out, and I judge myself a lot, like good enough to be loved by God. And so I would then judge other people as well, like because they couldn't, like, okay, I need to make myself feel better somehow. So I'm going to judge them and see how they're worse than me, even though, because I feel like I'm not good enough. And so I was not a fun person to be around. I did not understand that at the time. And there's two counselors that stick out in my mind. One of them, his name was Brandon. He was just this kind of, I don't know. He wasn't a hippie, but he had, he's that camp guy who walked around in just bare feet all the time.
We all have that guy. Giant
beard, and would just like be like off sitting by a tree meditating, kind of guy. Love this guy. And he, like, I guarantee that he saw what was going on in me. He knew that it wasn't fun to be around this person, but he loved me anyways. And he would talk to me and we would pray together, and he would uplift in me the good things that he saw in me. And at the time I was like, yeah, I must be a good guy. But thinking back, I guarantee he saw what I was doing to people, but he also saw what I was doing to myself. And he also saw me as a valuable person, despite my many, many flaws. And that changed me. And there was another counselor, and his name was Mike. He was this huge guy, like big buff guy, like bald and like intimidating. And he took me aside once and he said, John, you judge people. And he just said it in my face, like, and that is not okay. Mm-hmm. You need to stop. And that was it. That was basically the conversation that I could hear, or I can remember. And it blew my mind. I was like, people can tell? Like, I wasn't saying these things out loud, but apparently, like, it was the first time I realized that these things I was saying about people in my head, just, they illustrated themselves in how I acted toward others. And he's like, you gotta stop.
Yeah.
And that was mind-blowing to me, that he loved me enough. And he said it in a loving way. And I really, really appreciated it. It's definitely a tact. You have to say that tactfully, but it was said in such a way where, like, I knew he cared about me. It wasn't that he just, like, was done with me as an annoying, pester-ridden person. It was that he loved me enough to say something like that, and he said it in a way that I just knew he cared. Mm-hmm. And so, those are two illustrations, and they started to change in me what I needed to be changed. And it was really painful. It was a really painful summer for me. But I needed that. I really needed that. And people loved beyond. They loved me beyond the lines that they had drawn, these lines where it's like, that guy is awful. Like, I understand now why they didn't want it. Most of the counselors just avoided me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about you? What have you, how have you experienced that in your life? How have you experienced being loved beyond the lines?
Yeah. I think a lot of the stories that come to my mind all have to deal kind of with culture. And as you said, we're both white, if you can't tell. And and so for me, I grew up in a white suburban neighborhood. My schools, my churches, those types of experiences, I've always been around people kind of like me. And I think back to my time in Cupertino as a student pastor. I loved Cupertino because it was just a melting pot of all different cultures and ethnicities, and it was just so cool. I mean, you drive down the street, you've got an Indian restaurant, a Thai restaurant, Korean barbecue, you've got Mexican, everything. So food's one way to get to my heart. But I think about this time where I was at that church in Cupertino, and we went on a mission trip down to Ensenada, and we were building houses, and we're doing all this work, and the family that we're building the house for didn't have much, and what they did was they gathered. I don't know if it was their own chickens that they had gathered and killed and cooked, or if they went to the store. But they went all out, and they just made a huge feast for us, which at the time I didn't think much of, because, like, hey, we're working, like, this will be our lunch for today. But as I reflected on it more in the moment, where they're saying, hey, come inside to our house, sit down, like, here's our furniture, take a seat here, like, we want to just hang out with you and love you. And I don't share that story just because it's, hey, we're missionaries on this trip. We built a house, this is the payment or the reward. Like that wasn't it at all. The way that family just brought us in as their own, and just said, hey, like we're so thankful for you. Not thankful because you're just building as a house, but like your brothers and sisters in Christ to us. And we just want to love you and cherish you. And for me, it's like, whoa, like I'm on this trip because I wanted to come down and share the resources that God has given me and my church at that time and bless a family. But in return, like we were being blessed so much more because this family just said, hey, it doesn't matter. Like if you look different than us, doesn't matter if you're from California, like we're all part of the same family here and we love you and we care about you. And so that's kind of a moment in history for me that sticks out of this family just brought us in and really went beyond the lines of kind of norms or just even practices. So yeah, that's a story that will forever kind of sit with me.
I think it's really humbling when we're in circumstances like that, when we realize, and sometimes it's not obvious, like you said, to begin with, what's happening, what kind of love is being shown to you. Sometimes we're used to, I guess, having enough food.
Yeah.
In our culture.
And that's kind of like my mindset was like, all right, we're on a very strict schedule of constructing and building. And it's like, all right, here's our 30 to an hour like lunch break, 30-minute to 1 hour lunch break. And so it's just like, go, go, go. That's kind of how my brain sometimes thinks. But it was a moment where it was like, no, like, don't worry about what's coming next or what's around the corner. Just be in this moment of how this family wants to just hang out with you and love you.
I don't know how the food was. It was probably maybe different than your...
Oh, it's totally different.
Yeah.
And like, that's always intimidating, it's so easy. I remember going on a trip to Israel, Palestine when I was in 8th grade. And at that time, my food palate was, if it wasn't pizza or like a hamburger or a steak, like I didn't want it. And now I would go on a trip like that and be like, I could eat a ton of different things. But yeah, food is always something where it pushes you outside your comfort zone. You're like, so like that trip, I lost like 8 or 10 pounds and I was just like, I don't want to eat the food there. But yeah, I think when it comes to food, it's like always intimidating to kind of go that next step. But yeah, so.
Yeah, sometimes it's loving beyond just to try to get it down. Yeah. It really is, because not being used to it. This is like, fine food to them, but they're just used to it in a different, palate, like you said. And sometimes it's loving beyond just to make sure you can eat it. Like make sure you eat it and eat it graciously type thing. Yeah. Definitely. We want to kind of do a recap of what our guests have talked about so far. And for right now, this is the first one of these types of episodes. We've had Cal on for 4 episodes, and so I have a few things that I thought are really good, and we're just going to talk about a few of them. There are so many. I would just encourage you to go listen to those episodes again if you haven't already. Check out those episodes; they're really, really good. The last 4 episodes upcoming to this one, you gotta listen to them. One of the things I think I've already talked about is that Cal said fear constricts and restricts. Fear shrinks your soul. So that's exactly what I was talking about earlier with the circling. When fear reigns, you're going backwards and faith is going to push you on and out. And I think that's something, even with just as simple as food.
Yeah. We
could be afraid of food and never taste it. I think of my 2-year-old. He's like, I don't like this. I put a chicken nugget in front of him, and because he hasn't had that particular type of chicken nugget, he's like, I don't like it. I was like, you haven't tasted it. He's like afraid that it's gonna be something different. It's gonna not taste good. And then when he tastes it, he's like, oh, this is amazing. I'm gonna eat 5 of them. And so it's like sometimes fear can restrict things like that too. I just think a simple illustration of food can really apply to people as well. It's like we're afraid of stepping out, especially picky eaters like I used to be, stepping out and trying something new because we were like, oh, that's going to be awful. I'm going to hate it. It's going to be a waste of time, waste of money, or a waste of my palate or something like that, but we restrict ourselves then. Our circle is closed. We don't get to have those new experiences. And then you have the opposite side of the spectrum, which is the foodies who are trying everything possible. And I'm sure they don't like everything that they try, but they're expanding. They get to experience way more than the picky person does. And maybe they don't like everything that they eat. I think this is a really great illustration the more I think about it. They might not like everything they eat, but they get to experience a lot more things that they do like because they went out, they stepped beyond their fear in order to try it. And I think that's the same about people. I think we could be afraid of people because we don't understand them. We don't understand where they're coming from. We don't know who they are. Or like, sometimes it's even like, oh man, they're going to hurt me or something like that. We miss out on so much because we don't get to know them.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And I mean, Cal talked about that of like, I'm blanking on what episode number he brought it up on, but just talking about like even his own mother and how at the end of kind of her life, like the legacy of people that she had come in contact with was very, very small, 0 to none. Mm-hmm. And I think about our walk as Christians, and what Cal has said is like, hey, push outside of your echo chamber. And I love the episode where we talked about how to listen, because I think that is probably the number one way to start pushing beyond the lines is, you don't come to love someone immediately maybe, or come to like them even immediately, but getting to listen to someone, that can kind of start that bridge and move down the process. And so something that Cal has said that has stuck out to me is just asking the questions of like, what do you mean by that? And kind of just trying to get further clarifying answers, because I really think when it comes to just the day and age we live, like people keep to themselves and don't always necessarily want to be involved with everyone. Mm-hmm. But if you just ask simple questions, that makes you an interesting person because you are just trying to get to know them. And then at the same time, going back to even that Samaritan woman, it's at the end of the conversation, they might be like, hey, that person made me feel something. That person makes me feel important. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's a great way for us as followers of Christ to start going and pushing beyond those lines.
Yeah. I think it's valuing people, for being people created in the image of God, and respecting them because they have the intrinsic, like this dignity that's already been given to them by their creator, and often is pushed down by the world, depending on what people group you're a part of. And I think that's what contempt does. And we talked about contempt. Yeah. It's disgust, where we're already disgusted with a person because they believe this, they're from this country, they're part of this culture, they're different than us. We say it's so tragic, and I've done it in my own life, where we're like, you don't deserve to exist. You don't. You should be eradicated like a pest, and it's thoughts like that have started massive wars, have caused genocides. It's thoughts where we like, you as a person or a people group don't deserve to exist because I'm disgusted with you. You're a bug. And we break, our minds I think break, because I think we are designed to value human life. I think we are. But if we can just see that person across from us as not a person anymore, I remember all the war movies I watched, they always have these derogatory terms towards the other group of people that they're fighting. I think of like when they were calling the Japanese the Japs, like we had to kill the Japs, like was that World War II, I think. It's creating these images, and like they are not human anymore. It's okay to kill them. Right. It's okay. God didn't intend it to be like, he wants us to value every human life. He does. I believe that with all my heart. And it's when we break that in our minds where we're like, you're not a human. I am disgusted with you. I have contempt for you. You're not good. You're not good anymore. You don't deserve my respect. Yeah. That's where dangerous things start happening.
Totally. And I think that kind of moves us even to some of the content of episode 2. Cal had said, if you don't aim for something other than easy, you're always going to land on easy. And I think about just what you were talking about of holding people in contempt or just being disgusted with someone. Mm-hmm. Like that's the easy thing to do, right? Somebody cuts you off in traffic. Oh yeah. It's so easy for you to be like, oh, like I hate you. Like, yeah. What is your issue? And you could dwell on that all day, all night.
Totally.
And that's the easy thing to do. But what Cal said in episode 2 is that Jesus never landed on the easy thing to do. and that he had to put effort into it. We have to put effort into it. And I just think too, going down this path of if we as a church were to live out the values of what Christ actually wants us to do versus what society's telling us to do. Society tells you get cut off in traffic, pull over, go faster than that person, flip them off, keep going on with your day. But that's not necessarily what Christ is asking us to do. Not that there's any passages about driving in the Bible.
Thou shalt use thy turn signal.
Yeah, thy blinker. No, I wish that was something, but I digress. But yeah, I really think our world would be radically different if we all took on that mindset of, we're not going to make a difference as Christ followers unless we're willing to be different, right?
Man, we could talk for hours. I have to mention this. I'm sorry. But I was in India for 4 months, and I had the experience of going to Varanasi. I'm going to mispronounce a lot of things here.
Okay.
Varanasi, it's the origin place of Buddhism. It's the holy city. And besides that, a holy river runs beside the city. It's called the Ganges River. And I'm probably mispronouncing these really terribly. And we had the opportunity to, and this was not like a big metropolitan city. It was kind of run down. And like, I remember specifically like the power lines sparking, like just sparks, and nobody cared. Like, it's just like sparks were flying off from above. While we walked by the street, I was like, oh boy. And so, but we got to the river, and some Buddhist priests were doing like this ritual with fire, and they're dancing with it. There's 4 of them or 5 of them, I can't remember, on like these pedestals by the river, which is a holy river where people would wash themselves.
Okay.
They were worshiping, and there's this really cool like fire dance kind of ritual. I was like, I know that they don't believe in God, their creator. But I wish they did. But something I was like, this is kind of beautiful. You can see the image of God in the fact that they've created this ritual, and that it's beautiful, and that it's kind of cool. Like, I wish that they were worshiping my God that showed them that they don't have to do things like this in order to be loved, in order to be accepted, in order to have value, and that they don't have to be a part of that. But that I could tell that the image of God was still on them, even though they weren't following him. And I kind of said something along those lines to the group, and they were kind of shocked. So I was like, ooh, I hope I didn't say something wrong there, or I'm saying something wrong now. But I'm not saying that I'm a Buddhist or that I believe in Buddhism as the right way. However, I do see beauty in some of the rituals that they did. And I feel like God gave them that ability, and it's something that is dignified and is cool. It's not something that, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. No, and I get what you're saying. And, what it makes me think about is, talking about that image of God, the Imago Dei, and regardless of what someone, like in your circumstance, believes, we as Christians, we're called to recognize them as a human being, right? And that they too are made in God's image. And so I think that's just a good reminder for us, is to love, because at the same time, they might not be on the same path as us, but they're one of God's children too, right? God's children as well. And, it doesn't mean we always like everyone, because sometimes it takes time to get to like someone. But we still love them. Like, I even think about us back when I was in Cupertino. There was a student I met, and at first I was like, dude, you are driving me crazy. Like, you're bouncing off the walls. And it wasn't until I got to know this student, got to ask them questions, that I began to like them and begin to love them. And then it's like, hey, you might be crazy sometimes, and that's okay. But I still love you because you're made in the image of God just as much as I am. So, but yeah, and I think that just kind of leads even to of like, how do we listen to people who are different to us or different than us? And I love what Cal has said, is like saying to someone, your life matters, and I just want to honor you by listening. Listening to is the number one way that I can respect you right now, that I can honor you. And so, yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts about just kind of that whole episode about listening to one another. Episode 3, I believe, is what it was. But yeah, I don't know. That to me, I think that I've said it before, that's, I think the first step into really going beyond the lines is listening to people.
Yeah. And understanding them. If you think of like just India, it's like 3% Christian, but it's literally been reached. Like people have been trying to reach it since literally Jesus like went back. Like I visited St. Timothy's Mount, where they say like the disciple Thomas, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The disciple Thomas was martyred there.
Wow.
And there's like a Catholic shrine there.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that the country is still only 3% Christian. I think part of that is that a lot of Western missionaries who have gone there didn't take time to listen to the people and understand what their values and what their culture meant to them. They would say things like, hey, if you become a Jesus follower, you have to completely separate yourself from Hinduism. And what that meant is because to be a Hindu is to be basically an Indian. It's to be in your family. So you had to separate from your entire community, which is not a big deal, I guess, to a Westerner where we aren't as community focused, but to them, that's everything. And so you basically say, I have to, and Jesus does say like you have to give up your life for him, but like it was like unbearable. And then if they did break off, they had no contact with the people in their families to tell them about Jesus now. Like it's rough. And I think, and what surprised me a lot while I was there is that the churches that were there, they worshiped with guitars and pianos. And I was like, why? Like you have your own cultural instruments, but the Western missionaries that came there said, no, those aren't good. Guitar and piano are of the Lord. And it's like, how are these of the Lord any more than like a sitar or traditional drums or anything like that? But then I was part of like churches where they would all sing. I loved it, and just play a drum, and everybody would clap their own beat, and that was awesome. It felt more traditional. But they would. What I'm trying to say is, we need to listen a lot more before we try to we need to listen a lot more to people's values, where they're coming from, to understand how we can show them how Jesus fits. How Jesus can love them in the midst of that, in everything they've gone through, how he fits into that, and how he's always been with them, how he loves them and wants to be a part of their life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. And it's like what Cal mentioned, someone's story is going to be the truest truth that they know.
Yeah.
And so, for someone who is born in India, their story is based on their circumstance. Somebody who's born in the States is going to have a different story than someone born in Europe. The list goes on and on. But empathy is really just saying, hey, I'm going to put myself in your shoes. Mm-hmm. I know my perspective may be way different because my upbringing was different than yours, but I want to listen to you and hear what you have to say. And I think about the book, this is one of my favorite books, is How to Kill a Mockingbird. And Atticus Finch, the lawyer in that story, has this quote or this verbiage where it's like, hey, you can't judge someone or know their story until you've walked not a mile in their shoes, but a mile in their skin. And I think that's way different than the shoes, obviously, because it's, hey, try and put yourself in that person's body and understand their story. And that's what we're trying to do as followers of Christ when we talk about, hey, how do we go beyond the lines of listening? Is saying, let me just pretend I'm you for a second. Because that's the empathetic way versus the apathetic way of just saying, oh, okay, yeah, I get that, but we're still going to do it my way. We're going to do guitars and piano, for worship or something like that. And it's tricky because you'll never get there. You'll never get to the point where you know exactly what it's like to be them. Right.
I mean, you could live, like, if you grew up in the United States, they say, like, you're now, like, you can then spend 10 years in the United States and then live the rest of your life in India, but you'll never fully know what it's like to be a Hindu. You might get really close, depending on how long you're there, or in any other country or any other culture. You might get close to understanding what their culture is like fully, but you'll never fully get there because your heart began, your culture began with a different one. And so it's like living in this both and situation where you never fully understand what it's like to be that. But it all starts with listening and sitting down and like, I want to understand what's going on here. I want to know, I want to try my best to feel what you feel. and feel what you feel from your perspective, not feel what I feel from your story, but feel what you feel. I think once you're able to do that, you're getting close, and you will never fully get there, but it's the effort that really counts. I think when people can sense that you're trying, you're doing your best to feel what they feel, I think that matters. It really matters. And then you get invited into those sacred spaces like Cal was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's in those sacred spaces where that's where I think the real life happens, is people being honest and vulnerable with one another and sharing their deepest hurts or stuff that they've gone through. And then that's where you get to say, or not say, but just live out a life like Christ, where it's, hey, I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to support you. I'm going to love you. But yeah, so all of this to say, just, I don't think there's a more applicable time. It's not like we had an orb and we saw into the future of what's going to happen in 2020 and 2021. But I just don't think that there's a better time where the content and the topics of loving beyond and going beyond the lines could be more applicable than right now.
Right.
But yeah, we could go on forever about this.
And we already have.
We already have, yeah.
We have beat the record. Everybody knew when they clicked on this episode that this is a longer episode than the others. I hope you enjoyed it. We need to stop.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But we could talk forever. This is something we're really passionate about. We're learning about it too. I do not feel like I am anywhere near Cal's level, anywhere near. And so I am very, very honored to be a part of this podcast where I get to learn from people who are on a different level of loving beyond than I am. And I can't wait to learn from them. So thank you so much for joining us today for the Beyond the Lines podcast. We record here at Central Christian Church in Phoenix, Arizona. Our church is pursuing the mantra of love beyond. You've heard that a lot during this podcast, which calls us to empathize with people who are different and build bridges of peace. If you're interested at all in learning more about our church, check us out at centralaz.com. We have online services as well as a bunch of different locations in the Phoenix metro area if you're local. We will see you at next episode of Beyond the Lines. Until then, start loving beyond your lines.
See ya.
Bye-bye.